Greetings, guys, gals, non-binary pals, and welcome back to another video. Recently, I stumbled upon a subreddit. It's a very popular subreddit called TIFU, which stands for Today I Effed Up. I'm trying my best right now to not swear in my videos to see if it makes any sort of difference to performance. But I've tried this several times in the past, and it's just something I do subconsciously without thinking about it. So I'm probably gonna last a total of about 3 minutes, but it's a challenge. We're trying to not curse today. Please wish me luck. So today I thought we would go through there. We're gonna look at some people just making mistakes, because it's quite amusing. Some people make some pretty ridiculous mistakes. They're quite amusing and some good learning experiences. But before we get into looking at people's mistakes, I would like to say a massive thank you to today's patron of the day, Kaya. I appreciate your support so much. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you enjoy this video. And if anyone else would like to become a patron, you go to patreon.com/savvycat. Click the top link in the description. It starts at as little as £1 a month, and I appreciate it greatly. Okay, let's get into some people's screw-ups and how they have impacted them. Today, I effed up by asking a MILF for her number. So I was at the mall with my son, who's a toddler. Anyway, my son was playing really well with this little girl. They were two peas in a pod playing together, just having a blast. I'm a big dude. A lot of people say I look scary type look. Anyway, my son is playing, I'm eating my lunch, and I decide I need to figure out who this girl's parents are. I figure it out, and she's apparently a hot mom. So I walk up and go, hey, our kids are playing together. Maybe I can get your number and we can set up a play date. She looks at me and goes, married? I was thinking, that's nice. My son wants to play with your daughter. So I said, me too. My wife would love to meet you. Our kids are playing well together. Do you want to set up a play date? At that point, her husband walks up and she goes, this guy is asking for my number after I told him I'm married. At this point, I'm thinking, fuck it, not worth it. I apologize and sit down and wait for my son to finish playing. That's so funny because if in the initial conversation, it was, our kids are playing well together. Can I get your number and we can go on a date? I'd understand being a little bit you're trying to use my kid to go on a date with me, but he specifically said play date. Both times. Hey, our kids are playing together. We should organize a play date. Maybe they want to hang out again together sometime. I feel like it was pretty solid in that explanation. I understand not wanting to give a random man your phone number. That's fair enough. I do get that. But I just feel like it's really funny to just turn it into he's trying to ask me on a date. Husband, excuse me, this man is trying to ask me out. He wasn't. And he was very clearly not trying to. You know? I feel like just a conversation could have been, that could have gone better. I can imagine the frustration a little bit coming from asking to set up a play date for your kid because, you see your kid happy and you think, hey, friend for my kid, that could be fun. Maybe my child wants to hang out again. And then being rejected because they think you're trying to ask them out is upsetting in a bunch of ways. One, you're feeling like you're being misunderstood and painted out to being disrespectful when that's not your intention. And two, you feel like you might be possibly letting your kid down. But I also understand not wanting to give your number to someone you don't know. I feel like it's different when kids are involved. If you organize a play date in a public area again, you can be hey, we should meet up in the park some other time. That shouldn't be a big deal, To each their own. Sorry that you had a bit of an awkward interaction. Frustrating. Today, I effed up by flowering while showering into my 20s. This happened many years ago when I was but a young man in college, but the story actually starts about 18 years before that, when I was a baby. Like most kids, I hated getting soap in my eyes in the bath. Even the gentle baby shampoo would send me into a rage. My dad, being the intrepid problem-solving sort with a penchant for over-engineering, came up with a sort of 360-degree visor that my hair would stick through. Then they could wash my hair and the soapy water would just roll off. It was great. It kind kind of looked like a flower on my head, so my parents would say I was flowering while showering. Eventually, the OG visor got mildew and was disposed of, but my dad made a few over the years. He ultimately stopped when he decided that I should be able to wash my hair without getting soap in my eyes, but I wasn't having it and I started making my own. Over time, flower hats for this exact purpose became mass-produced and I switched over to buy them as needed. Never got soap in my eyes and it was great. Well, by the time I was 20 and living in my own apartment in college, I still hadn't kicked the old flower hat. I was flowering while showering every day, living my best life. Cue a cute girl staying at my place and suggesting we take a shower before Cue a cute girl staying at my place and suggesting we take a shower together before... What? I just say sex, right? Sex censored? Am I allowed to say sex? I am. I've decided. Cue a cute girl staying at my place and she suggested we take a shower before having sex. She asked me to wash her hair and brush conditioner through it, which apparently felt good to her and was a major turn on. When I was done, she offered to wash my hair. I didn't think that would do anything for me, but I said, sure. I then reached out of the shower for the drawer where I kept my flower hat and put it on. At first, she laughed and thought I was joking, even after I explained what it was. But then I think she noticed how it looked kind of old and used and faded, and that it would be strangely elaborate to keep a flower hat in my bathroom for the occasional joke. To her credit, she washed my hair while I wore it. We didn't end up having sex that night. I can't remember her explanation, but she left the next morning and she didn't return my calls or AIM messages. I didn't stop flowering while showering immediately after that. I would just say, oh, I washed my hair already, if the situation came up again. But when I met my now wife, I knew it was time to give it up. So I no longer flower while I shower. I just live with the occasional pain of getting soap in my eyes. But you better believe that when we had kids, I immediately got them flower hats. My wife thinks they're pretty brilliant. She has no idea of my dark past, and every once in a while I look at my kids' flower hats and I hear them calling to me, beckoning me to don them. I haven't succumbed yet, but I think it's only a matter of time. That's so funny in the way that, like, I've never seen one of these before. And, like, me personally, I don't entirely understand how you're getting soap in your eyes frequently enough to require that. Like, I don't think I could tell you the last time I got shampoo in my eyes, because I wash my hair with cold water, so I'm trying to keep as much of my body out of the shower as possible. So I, like, put my shampoo in, and then I'm, like, arching my back and my head, like, as far back as I can go without literally falling over and hitting my head and passing out. So nothing ever gets in my eyes, ever. And I can't imagine how you're getting soap in your eyes every time you wash your hair, but, like, you know, I don't know how you're showering. Maybe do that. But regardless, the idea is so funny. Yeah, having a shower with someone and then being like, can I wash your hair? And they reach out and they come back with this, like, full brim little hat. That would be so startling. I'm kind of obsessed with the confidence of it, though. Like, if that was something that I did, if I was in that situation, I would not even think to grab that. I would be like, yeah, no, we don't need that today. That's not something we need to get into. I'm obsessed with the absolute, like, no shame of that. Being like, this is a totally normal thing. No one would judge me for it because it's just a thing that I do. And just, like, not even think about it. Like, sure. Like, you know, I don't think we should be judging people for habits they have if it's not harmful. And I'm just impressed by it because, like, I'm someone with anxiety who constantly cares about what people are going to think and say. And I would absolutely love to have the complete lack of anxiety of doing something differently to anyone else. And being able to do that without a second thought, I respect the hell out of it. Don't let anyone tell you to not wear your flower hat while showering. Today I effed up when I, 18 male, asked my parents for permission to have sex in my room. A couple of months ago, I asked my parents if I was allowed to have sex in my room. My girlfriend and I usually had sex in the woods, but it became too uncomfortable and unsafe, so I decided to embrace the embarrassment of asking my mom and dad for permission to sleep with my girlfriend in my bed. I never wanted to have that conversation with my parents, but I wanted to show them that I was mature enough to talk to them instead of sneaking my girlfriend in and out of the room when no one was watching. Cue the awkward, can I have sex in my room? Conversation. My mom struggled to accept the fact that I was sexually active and got upset at me for expecting her to allow me to have sex under her roof. In other words, the answer was no. I was 17 at the time. My mom completely lost her mind after that conversation and decided to start hiking all of a sudden, which was an obvious excuse to patrol the woods where my girlfriend and I had sex. She even managed to convince other like-minded moms to hike with her because my girlfriend and I were not the only teenagers hooking up in the woods. I called them the neighbor wood watch. My girlfriend and I were forced to go deeper into the woods to lower the risk of not only being caught by real hikers, but also by mother hikers, aka the NWW. I was confidently leading the way to our new sex spot until I realized I had no idea where we were anymore. I was low-key experiencing post-nut clarity, but without the nut. There were no signs or trails anywhere. My girlfriend and I spent most of the afternoon retracing our steps instead of having sex. I don't know how long we were lost, but it was beginning to get dark when we made it out of the woods. My girlfriend was not happy with me at all. She made it clear that she was done in the... God damn it. Have I said that multiple times through this? I have. Okay. She made it clear that she was done having sex in the woods forever. My mom successfully made the woods sex-proof and cock-blocked me. Not much has changed since I turned 18. I'm still living at home with the leader of the NWW. My girlfriend and I are not having as much sex as we used to because of the woods are off limits and we're too poor to pay for privacy. For the record, if you're in my position due to the increase of moms in the woods, I'm so sorry. Okay, I always have things to say about parents like this because it doesn't make sense to me. You know, like, you are now aware that your son is having sex. Yet you know that your kid is having sex. Like, and you can't stop that from happening. They've come to you and asked permission to do it safely in your house where that you know where they are and you know that they're safe. And you say no, even though you know that they're going to be sneaking out and finding less safe places to do it, and you're not going to know where they are. And on top of that, it's really creepy. It's really creepy to deliberately go and like walk around places that you know where your kid and other kids are having sex. Like, you're actively trying to catch teenagers having sex. Like, that's something you want to see. You want to walk in on kids having sex? Why is that something like, what are you gonna do in that situation? That's the thing. Like, what's the plan here? You are deliberately hiking where you know that you are going to see teenagers having sex. Or you don't know that's what you're gonna see, but you are hoping to see. You are literally hoping to catch teenagers having sex. What do you do when you do? What happens when you see them do that? 1, they're traumatized. 2, you're traumatized. 3, you say, stop it right now. And then what? They're just gonna go do it again later. All you've done is traumatize everyone involved. And now you're forcing your own kid to potentially get lost in the woods in the dark because there's nowhere else for them to go. Like, just let them be safe. I do not understand. Your kid is having sex. They were trying to be responsible and safe, and you told them no. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, why does it matter? If your kid is being safe and responsible, why does it matter if they're having sex or not? Especially when they're like 17, 18, whatever. Like, I don't get it. My mom, after I broke up with my first partner, my abuser, my mom and I had the conversation when I was 17, and she was like, you can bring people here. You can do what you want. I would rather it be in my house than anywhere else. When I started like going out clubbing and whatever with my friends, she's like, you can bring people over. I would rather you bring them here than you go to random people's houses because I want you to be safe. Just let me know if you have people here. And that was the conversation. It was always a bit awkward because my room is like upstairs. You have to go through the whole house, and like bringing just random people home and walking past my mom and my sister while they're watching TV to go up to my room. It's always a little bit of an awkward experience. My mom would be like, I just pretend you're playing cards. And that's fucking hilarious to me. But that's the way that you should go about it, you know? Like, it's the same as like providing your kids with like a safe place to experiment with drugs and alcohol or whatever. You don't have to encourage it to accept that it's okay. If you're actively telling your kids, like, don't do this, it's bad, I'm gonna do everything in my power to stop you from doing it, they're gonna sneak off and be real dangerous about it, you know? I got tattoos when I was 16, 17, signed off by my mom because she's like, if I don't sign this off, you might just go and tattoo yourself and it's going to be dangerous and you could get hurt and infected and it's not going to look nice or whatever. So I got a ton of piercings when I was 14, 15, 16. It's why I got tattoos when I was younger, because it's better to be safe and have your parents know that you're safe, because kids are going to do it anyway. Having strict rules means they're just going to be broken. You're encouraging your kid to go have sex in the woods, basically. Stop trying to perv on teenagers having sex. Stop trying to control your kids. Just let them be safe and have good relationships with you and everything else. Today I effed up by getting caught with a dildo up my ass. Okay. I, male 29, have been with my girlfriend, female 27, for 4 years, living together for 2. We have a pretty good sex life, but there are some things I want that she doesn't. Since this is an alt account, I'll just say it. Sometimes I like being pegged. I told her this exactly once, about 6 months into our relationship. At first, she thought I was joking and just laughed at me. When she realized I was serious, she said it was weird and gross and had absolutely no interest in it. I haven't mentioned it since. Okay, well, we're gonna take a pause here for a second. Why are we calling pegging weird and gross? I don't think we should be shaming people for their interests and their kinks. It's not even a kink, really. That's just something you're into in the bedroom. I don't think that requires shaming. Instead, you could just be like, I'm glad that that's something you like. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's not something I'm personally interested in. Maybe we can revisit this later. You know, like there's a way to say you aren't interested in doing something without laughing at someone and shaming them. Because there is nothing wrong with pegging. I want to know what's gross about it. What's weird about it? Because it feels almost like bordering on homophobic to call it gross and weird, right? Like it kind of is feeling a little bit homophobic there of like, why? What's gross and weird about it? Please explain. I still have an old dildo from a past relationship. My ex loved pegging. She was the one who convinced me to try it in the first place. I still use it when I masturbate. Not every time, but most of the time. My girlfriend doesn't know I have it, and I intended to keep it that way. Not that I needed to hide it because she'd be upset. I knew she wouldn't be, but because it's freaking embarrassing and I don't want her to know. I'm very sorry that you feel shame over this interest you have when you really shouldn't. Since we moved in together, I haven't been using it as often, which is fine. Our sex life is still good. But when I have the place alone for a few hours, I still use it. And to be clear, I'm definitely not fantasizing about my ex. That ship has sailed and sunk. I just watch porn, which we have both expressly agreed is completely fine, although neither of us does it often. Today, I was home alone enjoying myself. My girlfriend was supposed to be out for most of the day, but she ended up coming home early. She came in quietly, and I was being rather loud, so I didn't know she was home until she walked right into the bedroom. When I saw her, I panicked, screamed, rolled off the bed, hit my head on the nightstand, and the dildo fell out with a loud, wet plop. She started laughing louder than I've ever heard her laugh before, and she turned and left the apartment. No clue where she went or why she came back early at all. Okay, but like, why? She didn't even check you were okay? Like, you just fucking straight up rolled out of the bed, hit your head, and fell on your ass. And all she did was laugh at you, turn around, and leave. Like, I understand that that's a little bit of like it can be like a bit of an embarrassing moment for everyone. And the initial reaction when something like that happens, or even when like a friend falls over or whatever, is you do laugh a little bit. And then you come to your senses a second later and you're like, oh my God, are you okay? That's typically how the response is meant to go. Not just laughing at you and then walking out and disappearing while you're sitting there now sore. So now, a few hours later, I'm sitting here with absolutely no idea what to do. I haven't texted or called, and she hasn't either. I can see on Life 360 that she's at the beach with some friends, like she was planning on. If her plans don't change again, she won't be back for another hour or two. I have absolutely no idea what will happen when she gets back. I'm not sure if I even want to. I'm seriously considering going to a friend's house to hide from all this. Fuck my life. See, exactly, right? Like, laughing at this happening and then just walking out without saying anything, without contacting or anything, like that just leaves you to sit and feel like shame and embarrassment, even though there's nothing to be like, there's nothing shameful or anything to be embarrassed by. It's just doing something that like brings you pleasure and that you enjoy, that your partner won't give you, that you've agreed is fine. But then like, obviously because of the initial reaction when it was first brought up as being like, that's gross and weird, to now seeing it happen, laughing and leaving and then just not saying anything for several hours. Like, that's forcing you to sit in so much shame and anxiety that was completely unnecessary. Like, that didn't have to be there. She could have just asked if you were okay and you could have just had a conversation about it then and there. You shouldn't have to sit there and be like, do I just run away for a bit? Didn't need to happen. Just didn't need to happen. There's an update. Big update. She came home, we talked, she laughed because in her words, it sounded like you had 3 or 4 guys in there. I seriously thought I was about to bust a gay orgy. It was partly because of my reaction and partly relief that I wasn't doing anything wrong. She had completely forgotten that this was even something I was interested in because I only mentioned it once so long ago. I wonder why. Maybe it was only mentioned once because the initial reaction was laughing and calling it weird and gross. I also would never bring it up again. Now that she realizes it's something I still want, she's willing to give it a shot. She doesn't promise to like it, but she promises to try it, and that's way more than I expected. Honestly, I was just hoping she'd pretend it never happened. I would have been happy with that, so this is great. And for all those who keep asking, no, I didn't keep going after she left. I have no idea where the dildo went. It vanished. It better turn up because now I really need it. Final update. We tried it. She actually liked it. She didn't realize what it was until we did it. It's going to be common now, looks like. And yes, we found the dildo, and no, it wasn't hiding in my ass. I would have known. It rolled under the dresser. Thanks everyone for the supportive comments. And for those of you who are calling me gay and unmanly, I have only one thing to say. Fellas, is it gay to have sex with a woman? Okay, I have a question here because she said she didn't actually know what it was. And yet she called it gross and weird. So like, why are you calling something gross and weird if you don't know what it is? Like, instead, maybe be like, can you tell me what is that? Can you explain that to me? Why do you like it? What does that involve? You know, like this whole thing could have been prevented if this conversation happened ages ago and shame wasn't initially like immediately shoved into the situation. I'm glad it worked out in the end. I'm glad that you've discovered that this is something you enjoy doing together. But like, ultimately this entire thing was entirely her fault. From start to end, you know? There was so much shame that existed in this relationship for years that didn't need to exist ever at all if a conversation was probably had at the beginning and she didn't react the way that she did. And fucking hilarious. Again, like, at the end to everyone calling me gay and unmanly. Okay, so like, question there is one, who cares? As you said, fellas, is it gay to have sex with a woman? There is nothing inherently gay about pegging. Just as there is nothing like straight about when like two women are having penetrative sex with a strap on. That is gay. This is straight because of the people who are involved in it. But even if it were gay, who cares? And also, what's unmanly about it? You know, I feel like it's better and more I feel like it shows a lot more about yourself to be willing to explore parts of yourself with absolutely no shame or care about societal standards than it is to be so fragile in your masculinity and your heterosexuality that you refuse to even acknowledge that there is a part of you that feels pleasure in a different way, but you won't acknowledge it because it makes you feel less of a man or makes you feel gay as though that's a bad thing. Like, I feel like you're the ones missing out here. If you are deliberately denying yourself of pleasure because the idea of trying it somehow threatens your masculinity or your heterosexuality, you need to work on that yourself, because it doesn't mean anything about your sexuality or your masculinity to just explore different facets of pleasure. And obviously you don't have to. If you aren't interested in prostate play, you don't have to do anything about that. But you gotta think about why it's off the table. Today I effed up by putting tampons in wrong for 10 years. I feel so embarrassed. I, 23 female, have had my period for more than 10 years now, and I just learned from a Reddit post of all places that you are not supposed to shove the whole thing, applicator and all, up there and just leave it like that. I have a biochemistry degree. I have traveled the world, and yet somehow I never figured this one out. This is my first and probably last Reddit post because I cannot keep my horror at the fact that I've been keeping pieces of plastic in my vagina for 10 years inside, but I absolutely cannot fathom telling anyone I know about this. I've always thought that tampons were super uncomfortable, for reasons that are now glaringly obvious, and mostly used pads, but I love swimming and so I use tampons fairly frequently during the summer. As best as I can figure, I've used hundreds of tampons in this way. I've been scouring my brain, but I don't think anyone ever told me about this, despite the multiple wildly uncomfortable health classes I had to take in grade school. The worst part is, I knew the plastic bit was called the applicator. I just figured that's because it made putting it in easier, and you were supposed to leave it in. Thank you, Redditors, for listening, and I can only hope that this horrifying blunder of mine will convince you to explain very clearly to your children how tampons work. Too long didn't read. I have been using tampons wrong for 10 years and I'm extremely embarrassed. Edit to answer some questions. Yes, the whole thing fit up there. Maybe I just have a long vagina. I don't know. No, it probably didn't work great, but I kept them in for a couple hours at most while I went swimming, and I used them very infrequently, maybe a few times a year. There are lots of comments asking why I didn't read the instructions. Well, my mom always just had loose tampons lying around. I've bought my own maybe once or twice, but that was when I was much older, so by that point, I felt confident in tampon using abilities and never read the instructions. Lol. I had health class when I went to grade school in a fairly liberal public school district. Now I'm questioning what I thought was a fairly comprehensive health education. This brings up such a good point that I hadn't really considered until reading this of like, yeah, we never really learned about like how period products work in school, you know? Like I thought I had pretty comprehensive sex education as well at my like liberal school, but I don't think we ever learned how like tampons actually work. We learned about periods, but not about period products themselves. And that's really interesting to me. That's so interesting to me. And it makes me think about all that like TikTok trend of like asking your boyfriend how a pad works and all of them thinking that you like stick it to your vulva instead of your underwear. And I'm like, that's true. That is how so many men think that it works because we were never taught about it at school. And I know a lot of people get split up into boy-girl classes, which I think is ridiculous. But I never did that. I had always merged joint. Everyone did everything, but we never learnt about period products. And this made me reflect and think about my own like tampon using experience. And I also had no idea what I was doing. My mom would buy pads. That's what we used because that's what she thought was like more age appropriate or whatever because I was like 14, I think. And it was just easier. But then one day I decided that I wanted to try tampons and I found a box of them just like in a cupboard. And these weren't applicator ones. These were just like the plain ones without the applicator. And I looked at the box and I was like, that seems easy enough. But I didn't do it properly. I didn't like put it in far enough or whatever. So it just like, it wasn't there. It didn't really do what it needed to do. And I did this multiple times, confused as to why it was uncomfortable, why it wasn't working properly. And I didn't ask for help because I felt embarrassed about that because it felt like something I should just like know, and maybe it was just uncomfortable because it was new and it would like get easier with time. And I only really figured out that I was doing it wrong and how to do it properly when my mom noticed I was using tampons and was like, okay, we need to talk about how this works and let me know if you want to keep using tampons. And then we had that conversation. And then I didn't really get my period much at all for a long time because I was on contraception from the age of 15 up until the end of last year. So I used period products very infrequently until the end of last year when I finally took out my Marina. And I started getting my period properly, which I'm still getting used to now. And I used applicator tampons for the first time. And I didn't know how the fuck they worked. I fucking looked at this thing and I'm like, the fuck am I meant to do with this? I don't understand at all. And it took me like, honestly, a couple of months to figure out how I was meant to be doing it properly. Initially, really, I ended up effectively just taking it out of the applicator and using it like just a normal tampon without an applicator because it didn't make sense to me. I didn't get it. And I, for some reason, didn't think to look at the instructions because I felt like it should be obvious. I finally figured it out. So I use either like applicator tampons or period cups, which for some reason I figured out much easier. Somehow I found the menstrual cup made more sense and I was able to use easier. But all in all, my point being, I am 24 and I only recently really figured out how applicator tampons worked. And I think I know most people I know have some sort of story with like trying to figure out tampons or whatever for the first time. No one I know has done this where they've left the whole applicator in. That does sound incredibly unpleasant, but I completely understand how that's a situation you end up in, right? Like it makes sense in your head. Like, why would it come like this if it's not meant to be used like that? And if you don't have instructions and no one's told you, then that's what you're gonna do. And this happened recently. They're 23 now, so they're my age. They were 13 when this started. And like, I don't know, when you're 13, especially in like 2013 as well, like you don't You don't want to be Googling stuff, you know? It's like, what if your parents check your search history? What if the FBI is watching or whatever? Like, Googling shit like this is difficult. And being embarrassed about your body is so easy, and you just don't want to think about it. You don't want to look at it. You don't want to Google it. You don't want to think about it. You just want to be right and put in as little thought as possible. So this makes a lot of sense in the situation. And I think that we should stop shaming people for their period experiences. Because we all have some sort of experience. We've all had some sort of learning curve that has happened at some point. We've all like bled through onto chairs or whatever in public places, or like we've all got stories and experiences, and there's no need to judge other people for their experiences. What should happen is that we should be learning more about periods at school. If we can learn how to put a condom on, we can learn how to put a tampon in, you know? Something to consider and something we should definitely bring into the curriculum. How easy would it be to just get like a model of a vagina and like insert the tampon and just show how it works? Or you don't even need like an anatomically correct model. You can just figure it out and show a class how it works. I feel like it's important. We should definitely do that. Today I effed up by changing my name to a porn star's. Okay, so I have a very weird first name. I like it well enough, but I spent a good chunk of my life explaining pronunciation and spelling. I had similar problems with my maiden name and considered changing one or both for the sake of simplicity. Enter my husband. He has a lovely, easy to spell, very common last name, so when he proposed, I decided to take it. I figured, hey, I get a name that's easier to spell and pronounce. Plus, it meant a lot to him, and I thought it would be a nice romantic gesture. And at first, it was. Now, leading up to our wedding, I was completing my PhD and working on entering the job market. Once we were married and the name change became official, I began to modify my CV and my more general use resume. I was newly married, finishing my dissertation, and getting ready for my career. And now, at least half my name wouldn't make the hiring coordinator's eyes cross. I was excited. Fast forward to a perfectly innocent presentation on job hunting. The presenter suggests the old trick of Googling yourself to check your web presence for any old embarrassing relics from your social media. I realized I had never Googled my new name and smiled as I popped up a new search tab on my phone. Imagine my horror as I sat in a crowd of my peers and the first thing to pop up was a thumbnail of a woman with 2 dicks in her mouth. I figured it was fluke or an advertisement and scrolled hurriedly, but to my growing dismay, I found page after page of porn websites, cam sites, and OnlyFans and forums all tied to my brilliant new name. Now, this presented a long-term problem. Resumes don't generally include a photo. I had to find a way to convey to potential employers that I was an entirely separate person from this taller, admittedly far more attractive woman. I definitely did not intend to insist on constantly being called doctor or including my credentials wherever I put my name. Changing my name again would require a whole court proceeding, goodness knows how much money, and another visit to the dreaded Social Security office. In addition to employment though, I had a more immediate familial issue. My husband is Catholic, but he has an earthy sense of humor and would laugh this off. His family though, they are kind, pious, and a little sheltered. They are also very proud in-laws who have Googled me every time I appeared in completely boring campus newspaper. I knew they would understand, but I had to either allow them to stumble blindly into a little hurricane of dicks and pregnancy fetish material, or warn them as kindly as I could. Needless to say, our next visit was profoundly awkward. Now I insist on using my middle initial in professional settings, and I am rather particular about it. My students have been kind enough to comply, though sometimes 1 or 2 giggle when I show up on the first day. More troublingly, I also get the occasional disappointed look. I find it so astounding that, like, sharing a name with someone can harm your career prospects. Like, that's wild. Like, people have the same name. That's just something that happens when you exist on a planet with 8 billion people. There's gonna be some name crossing over, you know? And even regardless of that, right? I think that it's so ridiculous that even matters. Like, why can't I be an ex-sex worker and get a job elsewhere afterwards? You know, why can't I be a porn star and also work at an accounting firm? What did they say? They're on their way to becoming a doctor. I don't know what they're a doctor in. I don't think that really matters. I don't think it matters at all. I don't understand why my past has anything to do with my future, you know? Like, I didn't kill someone. It's like, what's the crime here? Having sex on camera? And what? Who cares? What has that got to do with anything? I just do not understand, especially when it's like there's such this stigma around sex work and porn and stuff, right? Of like people try to shame you for being in that. People are like, you shouldn't be doing sex work, you should get a real job. But then if they try to leave that field, no one will hire them because they were in that field to begin with. But they were in that field to begin with for a whole variety of reasons. Some people are there because they have to be for financial reasons. Some people are there by choice, but some people go into it with the hope of being able to come out of it and move into something different. And then they're not able to because they were there in the first place. And it's like, I don't see why it matters. I don't see what the problem is with having a past of doing sex work. It doesn't make sense. What's it got to do with anything? For one, anyone who like recognizes you from that aren't the ones to be in a position to judge. Like, you know, writing your name on the board or like being in a workspace and introducing yourself by name. If people know that name and associate it to a porn star, they can't judge you because they've been watching it. You can't shame someone for doing porn if you watch porn, you know? I just think it's silly. I think that there are so many things wrong with like standards that have to exist in workspaces. And this extends into like, you know, look at me, right? I've got my rainbow hair and my 21 piercings and my tattoos and whatever. And I know that like, that means a lot of places wouldn't want to hire me. And I find that so absurd. Like, what has that got to do with literally anything? Being like, it's unprofessional to have a past of sex work or even a present of sex work is absurd because doing sex work has nothing to do with the career that you're in now. Just like me having rainbow hair and piercings doesn't have anything to do with my ability to do work, you know? And that is especially true for like office jobs or jobs that aren't front facing. Like when you're working customer service or whatever, you always get the excuse of like, you need people to trust you. You have to have a certain image so people will trust you. I'm like, I can still do my job with my rainbow hair and my piercings. If people don't trust me because of that, that's a societal like issue. That's something that they need to work on themselves because literally what I put on my face doesn't impact anything. But it makes even less sense in like office jobs and shit because like who is there that has to like deal with you and like trust you and the business? Everyone there already works at the business. No one there is going to decide to or not to work with me because we're all just working in our own separate cubicles. And I have advice for that, by the way. I don't know how the rules work in most places, to be completely honest. Most of you are American. I have no idea how it works in the States or if it varies state by state. I only know how it works in New Zealand. And so if there are any Kiwis watching, or perhaps people from elsewhere, maybe it's like this in the UK, I don't know. Discrimination laws exist, right? And so you cannot not hire someone for having like piercings or dyed hair or tattoos or anything like that. Like that cannot be a reason for not hiring someone. If you're in like certain fields, like if you work in like food or whatever, they can have it as like a health and safety issue for piercings, which is ridiculous, but they're technically allowed to do that. But for the most part, it's discrimination to not hire someone because of their piercings or tattoos or hair color, etc. So they can obviously choose to not hire you for those reasons, but then lie about the reasons they're not hiring you. However, that also means that once you have the job, they can't get rid of you if you decide to dye your hair. They can't get rid of you if you decide to get tattoos and piercings. So they could say, if you're at like, get a job as an accountant or whatever, they could tell you like, we don't allow dyed hair or piercings or whatever, but like they can't actually do anything about it, because it counts as discrimination. And I know this because my mom's job is she hires people. It's one of her jobs. She is like high up in like the Ministry of Justice, which is a government department. And she has pink and purple and blue hair and a ton of piercings and also started getting a bunch of tattoos. And they don't like it, but they also like Can't stop her. She's been at this job for like 15 years now, and she just started getting piercings one day. She just like dyed her hair pink one day. Now it's been years, and they're like, they can express they don't like it, but they can't do shit about it. So that's some advice from my mother. Like, when you're going for the job interview, have your hair plain, put in the plastic piercings, flip your septum ring up, cover your tattoos with makeup, get the job, do what you want. They can't fire you without cause. I think in the States, you can just get fired, right? Because the States is an insane place. But back home, and I'm pretty sure here, there's like a whole process. You can't fire people without very, very good cause. And it's like a long process to like get someone to leave, like make them redundant. And you need a lot of time and evidence and reason and cause. So yeah, that's my advice for you. Anyway, I don't even remember where this started. Oh, porn stars. Yeah, let sex workers move into other fields, you know? Why does it matter if your name matches someone else? And also, why does it matter if people have done sex work? It doesn't. Neither of those things matter. I think that that's going to be the last one for this video. I hope that you enjoyed and had fun listening to some stories about people making some silly mistakes and the conversation that came along with it. If you did enjoy, please don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I will be uploading another one of these sometime because I saved a lot of posts and they're long, so it takes ages to actually talk about them. So yeah, if you want to see another one, please don't forget to subscribe. A massive thank you to my Sprout and Above patrons whose names are up on the screen right now. I appreciate you greatly. And a huge, huge thank you to my Kiwi Cat patrons. Bobby, Josh, Mandy, Ikazel, Jessica, Eldo, Danielle, Elias, Chris, Samuel, Radsack, Mr. Noodle, Jonathan, and Bon Bon. I love and appreciate you so, so much. Thank you so much for joining. If anyone else would like to become a patron, you go to patreon.com/savvycat, click the top link in the description. For as little as £1 a month, you get my videos early, as well as podcasts a week early. And then for £3 and up, you get things such as outtakes, bonus mini podcasts, live streams, vlogs, and more. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, The Queer Kiwi, and Twitter, That Queer Kiwi. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Keep fighting. I love you. Mwah. When you close your eyes.